Hello, darlings. So, I'm going to bring up a really important conversation around the healing journey. So, if you're on a healing journey, this video is for you. So, in light of decolonial conversations, which are rightfully being very centered at the moment with ongoing genocide in a number of places in the world, one of the topics that has come up quite frequently is that of Western, patriarchal, colonial, hyper-individualism. And I've really been reflecting on this deeply within myself because I can recognize this trait, especially in a younger, less healed, more angry version of myself. And let me tell you, at least in my case, because of course generalization is always going to be a little bit problematic, it is a trauma response. When you grow up with emotional instability, violence, not being seen, not being shown how to process your emotions are not held at all, constantly silenced, undermined, etc., 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 and you grow up without a sense of community. Now, just as a quick aside, I just want to say I'm not throwing shade on my parents. They did the best that they could with the knowledge and the understanding that they had. They also only had what they were given in life, right? And of course, it's not to say that they didn't have any friends, but I'm talking about real community, right? Not that, we sometimes gather, right? But like real community. So when you're raised by people with a lot of trauma themselves, and of course with an inability to process and hold space for their own emotions, all suppressed, and with a huge amount of emotional blocks and inability to see and acknowledge that within themselves. Also, it's probably fair to mention that just because a family is white does not mean they're all going to be in these same kinds of dynamics. I'm talking about my personal experience, and of course I come from the context of South Africa, which has a very specific political framework which does echo many colonial spaces in the world. So when you grow up with this kind of lack of community and trauma, and you don't learn how it feels to be safely held by a community, the response of, I'll do it all on my own, I'm all that I need, is actually a necessity at that point. It's a survival strategy because you've been disappointed by your lack of community, your lack of being held so many times, and so you choose to hold the self. But unfortunately, this often turns into self-abusive patterns because you've never even been taught how to hold yourself in community. Now look, I'm not done healing this, but it was really only in my 20s when I was in community, mostly with Black people or brown people or indigenous peoples, where I really started to tap into this understanding of like, oh, this is what community looks like. This is what community feels like. This is what it feels like to start breaking down those barriers and those walls of I'll be tough and hold it all for myself. And I'm doing my best to learn about building communities around myself and seeing a world where we build these kinds of communities where it is safe for us to unfold, to heal, to nurture, to grow, to hold each other. Now, I think it's always important to see the reflection of what goes on with the self in the collective patterning as well. So let's look at that pattern of colonialism. And of course, in relation to hyper-individualism and why it is that we need to actually heal this. It's actually a trauma response because the society does not hold us. And while it is unfairly, unevenly toxic towards a certain type of person because of skin color or ethnicity, it is toxic for all of us because we all deserve to have beautiful, held communities. And what many people fail to recognize or realize is that all of us have indigenous blood in us at some point. And most of us, probably can't speak for every single person, but most of us have ancestry, which might date quite far back, certainly not as recent as ongoing traumas or more recent colonial projects, but most of us have the trauma of indigenous peoples having their land taken, having their culture taken away, having their people genocidally attacked, right? And I'll just refer to some of my own ancestry, just of the Roman invasion in Brittany. And of course, the attack on cultic pagan peoples. So we all hold that ancestral trauma of colonialism, just some of us been living with that cycle of abuse within the immediate families for much longer. And so the oppressed becomes the oppressor, and that cycle continues until someone comes through to say, that's enough, I will be the one who heals. And of course, we can look at that reflection back again down into the family lines, right? Where a father abuses his son, the son grows up, doesn't heal, and becomes the abuser of his son. And so that cycle continues and perpetuates until one person wakes up and says, I'll be the one to heal. I'll be the one to forgive, to release, to let go, to be different, and to not pass that on to the next generation, right? To choose love instead of fear, because that fear is innately inherited in our DNA. That trauma is innately inherited in our DNA. And now, on a collective level, largely because of the reach of social media and the ability for people to speak their own narratives, we have this mass revealing of trauma that is happening in the world, whereas, of course, many centuries ago or generations ago, when these things happened, it was very much silent and hidden and then deleted from the history books. And now, as a collective, as a global community, we have this divine opportunity to say, enough. This ends with us. We will be the generation to heal. And we are all connected, people. We are all connected. All of this affects all of us. And our responsibility here is to answer that call, to hear that call of our fellow humanity, of that which is a part of ourselves, of our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our fathers, and to choose the kinds of communities we wish to build in a new earth. That is a spiritual calling. And this is a big, ugly collective shadow that we are revealing right now, but it is not a new narrative. It's been going on for centuries. But let this be the last. Let this be the last of its kind, and may we rise to end it. Yes, it's hard to look at it. Yes, it's triggering. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But the transmutation that is required, the gifts that comes from not trying to just sweep this under the carpet, the gifts that comes from actually looking it in the face and saying, let's heal this. Let's heal this. So how will you respond? Have you already? In each moment we have the choice to choose a new response, to redefine ourselves. It's never too late.